can tell him I got this. Haters can try but can't stop this. Sitting up promptly, wallow on my conscience. It's haunting with faults I deliver to exhaustion. Try to keep steady and I deal with all the nonsense. I'm on a straight path trying to be legendary. This ain't Hearts and V cards up in February.
Alrighty, hello and welcome. This is the MMA Reaction. I'm your host, Ivy, and we actually have quite a few things to talk about. It's been pretty interesting MMA weekend. I'm going to start off with the card that happened just yesterday, or I guess earlier tonight, if you will. UFC on ESPN 1. This is the very first primetime ESPN card, which featured a main event between Francis Ngannou and, of course, Cain Velasquez. As you probably already know, it only lasted 26 seconds, and Francis got the, I guess, TKO / knockout win. Probably due to injury, but it did look like Cain took a couple knocks. The claim here is that Cain Velasquez's knee blew out, which I think it did. I mean, in the replay, it didn't look like an ACL where it slammed inside. But there was definitely something wrong with his knee. But just prior to Cain's knee blowing out, he took a pretty hard hook in the clinch from Indigo, and it looked like he dropped him. So it's probably a combination of both things where Cain absolutely took a hard shot from probably the hardest hitting dude in the world of MMA, and his knee probably gave out and buckled. It is kind of interesting to me. Now you realize that Cain Velasquez was the main event on the very first Fox card ever. This was, I can't remember what year this was, but the very first one. Ironically, he was on a blown out knee, got knocked out by JDS, Junior Dos Santos. Flash forward 8 years later, 7 or 8 years later, he's on the very first card in the main event on an ESPN card. His knee gets blown out and he gets knocked out. Weird MMA gods, you know what I mean? So, really hard to watch. I was really hoping that Cain would return. The Cain of old would be back. And honestly, he just looked like an old man. It's sad, man, because Cain has had many layoffs where he'd fight and then he's off for 1 or 2 years, and he fights again, and then he's off for 1 or 2 years, and he fights, and then he's off for 1 more 2 years for shoulder surgery, back, knees, all kinds of problems and ailments. He just can't ever seem to stay healthy. But a healthy prime Cain Velasquez is better than any heavyweight we've probably ever seen. I mean, dare I say, even better than Fedor. So it's really unfortunate to see. I think we're probably looking at the last time we ever see Cain Velasquez in a cage fighting. Probably. He's 36. Didn't look tremendous. So it's really kind of sad. Where does he go from here? Probably retirement. If not, I mean, I guess heal up that knee, have another surgery, and then see where you want to go from there. In terms of Francis, though, Francis looked good. I mean, for the most part. You know what's kind of interesting, though, is that Cain started the fight with high kicks. Like, he threw 2 or 3 high kicks to open up the fight. I thought that was kind of strange. What are you doing, man? I mean, I don't know that necessarily contributed to the result of the fight, but I thought it was kind of a strange tactic. I thought he would just go immediately into the wrestling, get clinch. However, I will say, when Cain did try to engage in that clinch, that's where he got hit, and that's where he got dropped. So, not for nothing, Francis Ngannou did some kind of homework. He did some kind of work for preparing for that takedown. He's a very enormous, abnormally strong human being who hits harder than probably anybody we've ever seen ever. So what's next for Indigo? I don't know. I had suggested that maybe we see a Stipe Miocic rematch. I don't think there's a lot of desire for that fight from Stipe. I don't think Stipe wants to fight him again. He pretty much only wants the DC fight, which DC doesn't want any parts of Stipe. I don't think at this stage in DC's career he wants anything to do with a challenge or a potential loss. So he's going to just keep campaigning for that Brock fight because it's a fight he knows he can win, which kind of sucks for these heavyweights who can really pose a challenge. Mind you, I don't think Stipe beats DC, and I don't think Francis beats DC, especially with Daniel's wrestling acumen. He's not going to beat... Francis isn't going to beat him. But I wouldn't mind seeing a Stipe-Francis rematch. Let's see where Francis is at in terms of retooling and adjustments made, and see if that fight plays out a little bit different, because Francis, not for nothing, did have some success in that fight with Stipe. It wasn't just Stipe boxing him up. I mean, that was the end result, but it wasn't as if that was the whole fight. So, I mean, why not? Heavyweight's kind of held up right now anyway, so it seems like a pretty reasonable fight to me. The co-main event was James Vick versus Paul Felder. This was a 3-round decision. I thought Vick was going to win, but Paul Felder deservingly got the decision. He had better offense and frankly was just way more active. Vick did have his moments of offense, and he couldn't quite keep Paul Felder at distance, and he couldn't quite just get off on his combinations. So although he did have some success, really Paul, I think, controlled most of the fight. I think some people had Vic winning the second round, but I mean, Paul's a beast, man. He's a damn good fighter, and for him to be able to time a spinning back fist and close the distance on Vic, who's very tall, was really impressive, and should be commended for his fight. I mean, I think he did a really good job. What does this mean for Paul Felder in the lightweight division? Does it mean a title fight? No, I don't think so. Before this fight coming in, Paul wasn't even ranked. Vic was ranked number 10. Paul was unranked. So, not that this matters because rankings are kind of horseshit the way they do them, but theoretically, Paul should be at least 10th now, right? So maybe we'll throw him a 9-10, 8-7 guy, something like that. Anybody that they throw at Paul Felder is going to be a challenge for both guys. So, for Vic, man, I don't know. He lost to Gaethje by TKO, lost to Paul by this decision. I mean, I guess you just keep him in that same level, unranked opponents, and try to regroup. I'm curious, though, is if maybe it's the weight cut that's just taking too much out of him. Dude's a giant lightweight. At 6'3", however many pounds he is, maybe 170 would be a better option, and maybe your peak performance would actually be better if you weren't cutting so much weight. And I'd love to see Vic at welterweight, see what he can do. Cynthia Calvillo gets a decision win over Courtney Casey. This was actually a much tighter competition than I think people thought going into this fight. Courtney Casey, up to before this fight, had some of the worst takedown defense in any of the strawweight division. She didn't get taken down at all in this entire fight. Now, partly because Calvillo wasn't super persistent about getting the takedown, but when she did clinch up, Casey acquitted herself quite well, and it was a competitive fight. Calvillo definitely won the decision, but it was not a runaway victory. Casey definitely gave her a really hard fight and exposed some of the liabilities that Calvillo has defensively in the striking department. Calvillo won. She started talking about how she wants to fight Tatiana Suarez. Good luck. Tatiana is a dominant wrestler and a real prospect in that upper echelon strawweight division. I think Tatiana would be a very, very tough fight for Cynthia. Not that she couldn't win. I mean, in this game, it's so hard to predict who is and isn't going to win and where everybody's at. But you got to think that Tatiana Suarez would make easy work of Calvillo. Not disrespectful, but just I think Tatiana's at a different level right now. Cynthia's a really a really good talent, a very tough fighter. But I think right now Tatiana's maybe not someone I would call out right now. But nonetheless, that's what she wants for a title eliminator fight. So we'll see where that goes. Obviously, Kron Gracie made his UFC debut. He beat up Alex Caceres in 2 minutes of the first round. I mean, amazing performance from Kron. Amazing. And something I didn't expect. Now, I did think that Alex could win this fight. I thought that, sometimes people underrate how good Alex is, and his record's not always reflective of how good he really is as a mixed martial artist. But, I didn't expect Kron to come in there so calm, so cool, so collected. I mean, he could not be bothered inside that cage. He looked like he'd been born in that cage, and he'd been in that cage a million times. It was really impressive. He was very smooth, made easy work of Alex Caceres, choked out, done. I mean, the confidence this man's amazing. Based on this performance, you have to expect that the big things are expected for him. Like he's gonna climb that ladder pretty fast and get in some real mega fights pretty soon. And I can't wait for it. Yay, jiu-jitsu, right? Vincent Luke and Brian Barberina, fight of the night, war back and forth. Ended up being a stoppage win for Mr. Luke. Great fight. I think a little bit more competitive than people thought. Although, man, Vincent Luke, another guy, big prospect, big plans for him. Andre Fili, Miles Jury, that went to a decision. The theme of that fight was definitely Fili's jab. The only real trouble that Fili ever got into, he got hit with a spinning back fist from Miles, kind of put him down a little bit. He got right back up, and then he started working that jab. Bloodied up Miles Jury from the first round all the way to the third round. I think Miles Jury might be one of the bigger disappointments in the UFC. Like, he came in so high. People had these giant expectations of him. And he just never quite met that level of what people thought he was going to be able to do. And it's kind of unfortunate. So who knows where Jury goes from here. I mean, Fili picked up a good win. He lost his last fight and was complaining about it, bitching about it not being a fair decision. So I'm sure he's happy to be back in the winner's circle, and I'm happy to see him fight any mid-level lightweight. Good for him. I'm happy for him. Aljamain Sterling beats Jimmy Rivera. This is something I did not expect. Aljamain's a very, very good fighter. Super good fighter. Jimmy Rivera, I really hold him up high. And for Aljamain to beat him 30-27 across all scorecards, excellent. I think he's really starting to come into his own. And look out for Aljamain this year. I think you're looking for potentially a breakout fighter of the year if he can continue this kind of pace. Other than that, that's pretty much ESPN on UFC on ESPN. Overall, a pretty good card. I did not get to watch. I didn't watch anything below the Aljamain Sterling fight. So I don't want to give you any kind of false ideas about what I thought about those fights, because I have not seen them. They're a little early in the day for me. In terms of production, I thought the pace was a lot better. The Fox cards, particularly the FS1 cards, take fucking forever. The pacing is so slow, especially if you got 10 fights to watch on one network. I mean, you're in front of that TV for 6 fucking hours. So I thought the ESPN's pacing and production was a lot better. We didn't have to watch every walkout when it cut back from commercial. The fighters were already in the cage ready to go. I really appreciated that. And I think it helps everything. It smooths the transition, the production, everything's a lot better. So let's get into Bellator 216. There's not a lot of talking points, so I'm not really going to focus a whole bunch on the whole card. However, we will talk about MVP Michael Venom Page versus Paul Semtex Daly. I think a lot of people are saying that this fight was an absolute stinker. What a terrible display of mixed martial arts. Everyone said it was a boring fight. It really wasn't that boring to me. I think what happens is that there's expectations, right? People have expectations of what they think these two fighters are going to do. And then when it doesn't happen, they attribute that to being a boring fight, not what they expected. So the last thing on earth that we really expected was for it to be a grappling match. Paul Daley is not a grappler. He's not even a good wrestler. He's not even an average wrestler. He's a basic wrestler, and that's perfectly fine because that's not what he's known for. He's known for his hands. He's known for his stand-up, his striking, his knees. He's known for that kind of stuff. So for him to revert to wrestling, especially a guy who's complained about wrestlers in MMA his whole career, starting with Josh Koscheck, because Josh Koscheck held him down for 3 rounds. That's why he got kicked out of the UFC, because he took a cheap shot at the end of that fight after they announced the decision, because Josh controlled him on the ground for the entire fight. It's hilarious or ironic or whatever you want to say that he reverted to wrestling with Michael Venom Page. And I think that attributes to just how frustrating a fighter Michael Venom Page is if you're his opponent. You can't touch him. You can't get inside on him. His movement is so smooth in and out. Lunge in, lunge back out, lunge in, lunge back out. That at this point he just said, fuck it, man. I'm going to wrestle this guy and I'm going to win that way. And I think that's what Paul's plan was. Here's the thing. Paul relatively easily out-wrestled Michael Venom Page, which does not bode well for Mr. Page. Primarily because if Paul Daley can out-wrestle you, dude, you have no chance in the upper echelon, especially in this welterweight Grand Prix tournament that Bellator's putting on. Because I think Douglas Lima is his guy coming up. Woof. You know, never say never, because styles still make fight. Even in today's era of mixed martial arts, styles still make fights. And who's to say that MVP goes against Douglas Lima? I think it's him. I could be wrong about that. Don't hold me against that. But anybody in the upper echelon of the welterweight division in Bellator and Michael Venom Page can still starch and can still time that big shot and still, look like a world beater. But my goodness, if Semtex can out-wrestle him, he's in for a lot of trouble with the upper echelon of those welterweights. There's a lot of holes in MVP's ground game, his clinch game, his everything outside of his brilliant striking. So we'll be keeping our eye on him and seeing how things go and how this tournament progresses. But I think we as MMA fans got the answers we're looking for regarding what happens if Michael Venom Page gets wrestled. Well, it looks like he's got a lot of problems. People were talking about that choke attempt. And to me, it never looked like it was even close. It never looked like he even cinched it around the neck at all. And that could, you can't blame the guy. He's been doing karate forever. I mean, he's such a master at what he does. He is an absolute expert at what he does. You cannot become an expert at everything, especially coming into mixed martial arts kind of relatively late in the combat world. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. The fight wasn't great, but it wasn't the complete stinker. It was okay. It was all right. I wasn't completely unentertained with it. So, other than that, Mirko Cro Cop gets a decision over Roy Nelson. Excellent, man. It's good to see Cro Cop back in the winner's circle. Very concerned about Roy Nelson. Couple losses. Lost to Sergei in his last fight by knockout, and then lost to decision here. Man, he's really on the decline. It's really sad to see, because I'm a big Roy Nelson fan. So I don't know what they do with either one of these guys. But they're heavyweights. They're both in their 40s. I'm sure they'll fight till they're 50. It seems to be the way heavyweight goes. Chet Congo beats Vitaly Minakov by decision, as we'd expect. Bellator Ryan Bader had some things to say about Chet Congo. It's kind of hilarious. Check his Twitter feed. I can't remember the exact quote, but it's fairly interesting. Other than that, that's all the interesting topics for Bellator 216. 215, I'll talk about that in a minute. Just the first fight, or the main event. Real stinker for Bellator this weekend, man. I've been so high on Bellator lately. Just I thought their production was good, and they're really showcasing really good fighters. But these two cards this weekend were, for lack of a better term, they're dog shit. They just were not that good and did not live up to the expectations that we expect for a competing fight promotion of the UFC. So, do better, Bellator. That's what I think. Okay. So, of course, everyone wants a piece of Jon Jones. Everybody wants a piece of Jon Jones. So, prior to the fight this weekend, Cain Velasquez had said that he thinks he could beat Jon Jones. Well, obviously now, after this fight, I think even more people think that's not possible. The funny thing is that Jones finally responded, and this is what he had to say. Your confidence is going to have to be unlocked in order to beat me, my guy. You can't be talking about, I think. I feed off pictograms of self-doubt, and I can smell it from miles away. For now, let's just focus on fights ahead of us. My heavyweight days are inevitable. Clever. I really, I get a kick out of Jon Jones. The fact that I don't think it's any secret that we think that Jon Jones is going to go to heavyweight at some point. And honestly, who is going to give Jon Jones a real challenge at heavyweight? Stipe? Maybe. Derek Lewis? Probably not. Curtis Blades? Probably not. Francis Ngannou? Maybe. Daniel Cormier? Well, we already know. We've seen that 2 times already. The fact that Jones knows where he's at compared to other light heavyweights and heavyweights is pretty substantial. And I would suspect that he could easily carry the heavyweight and the light heavyweight titles at the same time if he really wanted to. There are some fun matchups at heavyweight. I mean, at this point, just to keep Jon Jones out of trouble and keep fighting, I don't care what weight division is at. I think it's pretty funny. Obviously, he's not going to be fighting Cain now. Maybe he wouldn't have anyway, but I think Cain was probably like one of the more interesting fights, actually, to be honest with you. So, anyway, real quick, Mitrione versus Sergei Kertanov. It ended in 15 seconds to a groin strike. Pretty brutal one, too, to the point to where Sergei could not continue because of the pain. There was a report that said that Sergei did not have internal bleeding, but it did give him a hemorrhoid. How in the hell do you get kicked so hard in the balls that it gives you a hemorrhoid? How does that even work? Like, that's crazy. Is that some like next level fucking kick? I don't know. Mitrione had said that he apologized to Sergei, apologized to the fans, said that it wasn't his intention, obviously, and I don't think it was intentional. It is unfortunate, but that's combat sports, man. Sometimes these things happen. It's not all that common for a groin shot to end a fight. Usually the fighter takes his breath, it takes 5 minutes if he needs it, and then they continue fighting. But for this one particular, it was so brutal that Sergei's in the hospital with a hemorrhoid from a fucking groin shot, man. That's crazy. So maybe they do the fight again. They'll rebook it or whatever. Maybe they'll do that. I guess they probably will have to because it's not like there's a giant pool of heavyweights sitting in Bellator stables. So they'll probably rebook it and then life will be good. Boom. Finally, something very interesting. So Khabib's suspended. Lightweight division is completely on hold. So who else but Max Holloway steps up and wants to fight Tony Ferguson at light heavyweight? Or I'm sorry, at heavyweight or at lightweight. There's too many shit in my head. Man, that's a tough fight. That's a really tough fight to call. I have to favor Tony Ferguson. I mean, really, at this stage in the game, I favor Tony over pretty much any top level lightweight. I just think he's too skilled, too wiry, too smart, he's like a fox, man. He's just so hard to kill, too. Max's greatest asset is his combination boxing. I think we all know that. He's not a big kicker. He's obviously not a ground guy. I mean, he obviously has acumen. He can wrestle, he can jiu-jitsu, he can grapple, he can clinch, but his bread and butter is the pace and that combination boxing. question is, can he put that pace and can he put that combination boxing on Ferguson? I mean, sure he could, 100%. But will he? I have to think no. I think if they do this for an interim title, it would be a fucking huge blockbuster fight, and it would be amazing. But I'd have to favor. I think Ferguson's just too big, too strong, too creative, man. He's gonna find a way to win, like he always does. I mean, the fight really is Ferguson versus Khabib, but because Khabib's suspended and he's not gonna do some stupid anti-bullying PSA for Nevada. It's funny too, because Khabib goes, "Oh, you want me to do an anti-bullying ad for Nevada, but you guys allow prostitution and alcohol and all these things that go against his religious beliefs." It's kind of funny. So we're gonna have to wait this whole suspension out with Khabib. So fuck yeah, man. You don't even have to make an interim title, really. Ferguson versus Holloway. That's a great fucking fight. That's a headliner main event fight. 5 rounds would be fucking incredible. I hope they get it together. I really hope they get it together, because I think it would be an amazing fight. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or statements, you have any comments for me, please hit me up at the MMA reaction at gmail.com or my Instagram page at the_MMA_reaction. And check this out, because I'm going to put this on YouTube as well. So if you want to get up on there, it's just the MMA reaction on YouTube. I appreciate the fuck out of you guys. Hope you have a good day, good weekend, good week. I will see you guys